All right, everyone. Well, we are back this morning and we are very luckily joined today by a true icon in the world of mixed martial arts and a man whose voice we all recognize, veteran voice of octagons all around the world, Mike Goldberg. Mike, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute honor to have you on. So getting into it, the first thing I wanted to ask you is that early on in your career in MMA, there wouldn't have been a ton of mainstream televised MMA specific commentators that you could watch to help inform your own style of commentating. In those early days of your career, specifically in MMA, did you look for inspiration in crafting your own style in commentating from commentators across other sports, or was your own style something that you learnt and refined on the job?
That's a great first question, Alex. Josh, great to talk to you. I love that you say, good morning, because it's the middle of the afternoon here in Phoenix, Arizona. I had done so many different sports before the UFC came into my life. I had done baseball. I had done college basketball, college football. I did about 800 games in the National Hockey League. In fact, it was my connection with the NHL on ESPN which set me up to get the job. Bruce Connell, the producer, longtime producer, may he rest in peace, my truly best friend, and lost him a couple of years ago, way, way too young. But Brucey was one of the main producers at ESPN Hockey. He's like, Goldie, got a gig for you. It's in Japan. You got to take a jiu-jitsu class. And you guys have probably heard me tell that story. But to answer your question specifically, Alex, I did my thing, if you will. Energy, enthusiasm, told stories, had the background of the fighters, had the timeline down, and I was sitting next to an Olympic gold medalist, the late, great Jeff Blatnick. So I had Jeff right there. Big John McCarthy was one of the first people I met. In fact, truly the first person I met was his wife, Elaine. I've told that story before. Mm-hmm. And so between Big John and Jeff kind of taking me through it, I was able to learn truly on the job. Commentating-wise, I knew I could tell stories. I knew I could make it exciting. I knew that I was going to do my homework. I also knew to stay in my lane, if you will. And I did that for 20 plus years. You stay in your lane. I took a lot of Muay Thai over the years, and I worked a lot of pads. But when it came to the jiu-jitsu part, I'm sitting next to Rogan. I mean, I'm sitting next to John Madden, and I'm Pat Summerall. Like, Pat Summerall played the game, but he knew John Madden was there. So I always stayed in my lane, and that's what really helped. And the fighters were great. I got along with the fighters very quickly, watched them train, talked to the trainers, talked to the fighters. But again, I mean, Big John taught me a lot in the early days, as did, of course, Jeff Blatnick.
Mike, I wanted to ask you, I saw back in 2005 that there was a deal presented to you by the WWE. And, obviously...
Man, it was that long ago now, Josh. Wow.
That you turned it down and re-signed with the UFC, which I think is the best decision because, I mean, my childhood was your voice listening to you, watching the UFC.
Thank you.
Would that ever be something you consider nowadays where it was, we're seeing a guy like Jimmy Smith, a former Bellator and UFC commentator convert to, Monday Night Raw and WWE. Is that something you'd still consider these days, or is that sort of past?
No, I absolutely would. I absolutely would. And I don't know if I was the first, but I was one of the first to congratulate my old partner, Jimmy Smith, because when I went to Bellator, I worked with Jimmy, and I told Jimmy, I don't care what I did at the UFC. I'm a guest. You're the mainstay here. Mm-hmm. They always said a poor man's Rogan. I think we'd all like to be a poor man's Rogan. We'd only have like $50 million, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, forget $100 million. We'll take the 50 for the podcast. But Jimmy was great to me. I got along with Jimmy. He's a wonderful human being, and he went to the UFC, which was a move that he always wanted to do, and he did nothing wrong. They just decided to start using fighters. And all of a sudden, my good buddy's out of a gig, had a great podcast going and still does, but I was thrilled when I heard that Jimmy got that job. And I knew that he could do the play-by-play because he's so versatile. So to answer your question, Josh, yeah, I would definitely consider getting into AEW, WWE, whatever it is, with Jake Hager, fighting in Bellator, and always do promos for him, and here we go. And I'm like, hey, how about you make a phone call now, brother? It would be a lot of fun. It would be a lot of fun. At the time in 2005, I was absolutely thrilled and absolutely honored and humbled by the offer, by the interest from the WWE. I'm a big Hulk Hogan fan, old school, Hulkamania, take your vitamins, I'll tell you what, Mean Mike. So I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled. Their production is second to none still. And they had offered a 3-year deal. That was a solid 3-year deal. I just said, Rogan teased me the week before I was going to make the decision. He kept going, you're not going to go do porn, are you? You're not going to go do porn. I go, Joe, this is it. So Joe went up and he talked to Dana and Lorenzo, and he basically said, this is my guy. We're great together. We love working together. Don't let him do this. And Lorenzo, and I didn't put a gun to anybody's head. I just said, hey, this is what they've offered me. I want to stay here, but I have a family, and they totally understood. And we were, I remember the call. Lorenzo and Dana called me from a hotel room in New York City. And Dana said, Goldie, Dana, Lorenzo's in the room too. Hey, Lorenzo, how you doing? And boom, boom, boom. And it was funny because Dana did the math of how many shows would you do on Monday Night Raw? You do nearly 50, right? So Dana did the math. He goes, in the big picture, Goldie, you're only going to get this much per show. And I was like, but what it was for me is, by 2005, as you guys know, the Voyage was really in some great waters, and there were still some uncharted waters. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if we had been to your home at that time yet.
No, I don't think so.
But when I went there the first time, I wouldn't have been there if I would have made the other decision. And I'd been on that journey, since 1997, since Ultimate Japan, and wanted to see where it was going to land. And much to your guys' points, Josh and Alex, it definitely turned out to be the right decision. But I was honored by it, and I would be honored by it again today.
For sure. So, Mike, you kind of touched on it there that you are a veteran of the game who has called some of the biggest main events in MMA history, along with having the honor of sharing the desk amongst some truly talented broadcast partners. Has there ever been a particular show or event where you really remember maybe feeling the pressure of the event, or maybe even a little bit of anxiety going into the event over the sort of grand stage and the spectacle of the event?
Very, very humbly, Alex, I would say no. I would say excitement. I would say enthusiasm. I would say hopefulness that I nailed it.
Yeah.
But I'm a big prep guy. I'm all about preparation. And just like you guys with your podcast and what you do in your daily lives, if you do your homework and you're prepared, you're not trying to trick anybody. Yeah. You're not trying to pull one over on anybody. So yeah, do I get butterflies and hope it goes well? Of course I do. Did I hate when I called it the Ultimate Fighting Challenge? I don't know why the heck I said that. His precision is precise. That one's actually turned out to be a good one. How I couldn't say Prodigy one night, who knows? But to answer your question specifically, Alex, there have been exciting times where I wanted to nail it. UFC 200 was a crazy week, because if you guys remember, the main event changed about 3 times.
3 times.
So I mean, I was revoicing, and then UFC 199 when Michael Bisping knocked out Luke Rockhold. If you guys recall, the night before, the great Muhammad Ali had passed. Yeah. So Zach Candido, our coordinating producer, and I are up voicing what turned out to be a beautiful tribute to Muhammad Ali till like 2 a.m. So there were those memories and memorable times where it's like, all right, get your sleep still. Come on, let's go. UFC 200 was one where I really took it in. My favorite band is the Black Eyed Peas. And so I just I was staying at the hotel. I was looking at T-Mobile, and I just started jamming Where Is the Love? And I have good friends with Taboo. I'm not dropping names. You don't have to watch your toes. But he did DJ my daughter's Sweet 16. And I zoned out for a second. So yeah, to your point on that one, Alex, I got in a zone. I wanted to nail it, but anxiety and nerves and a lack of confidence is a parallel with that you haven't done your homework, that you aren't truly as prepared as possible. And I was taught by some great mentors, Bill Clement in hockey is one of the main ones, that it's all about preparation. And if you're prepared, it may still not be the best broadcast, but you won't be trying to trick anybody. And fans like you guys, you know enough about everything. You know if somebody didn't do their homework. You know if somebody's trying to pull one over on you. And I respect that. I respect that for the fighters, and I respect that for the fans.
Yeah. Mike, what would you say is one of the most important elements to get right in an announcement or a commentary team? Because is it more of having a personal relationship with the other commentary members, or is it something where, making sure that, you don't just have two talented commentators, but the right combination of commentators?
It really, Josh, it comes down to my job being the quarterback. And I've always said that. I'm the one with all the plays on my arm. I'm the one that's Brucey's in my ear. We're going to this feature. We're going to this 5, 4, 3. And I'm the one who keeps it all in place. And then I want to set up my partner, if it's Joe, whoever else, if it's Joe and Randy one time. Right now, I started a project called Pro Box TV. And we have a 4-man booth when you include me, Roy Jones Jr., Antonio Tarver, Paulie Malignaggi. I would say, all right, well, yeah, that's a booth, right? And I go, all right, that is 13 world championships. And if you add mine in, that is 13 world championships. So that's a real good example, Josh, of what I take pride in. And that is being the quarterback. I've always said that Joe's like quarterbacking for T.O. or Randy Moss back in the day, the renegade wide receiver, but just get him the ball. Give him the ball anywhere and let him do what he's great at. A couple of weeks back, it's funny. I met a guy who's in the business, and he said, "You know what? You're my hero." And I'm like, "Okay, well, thank you." He goes, "You taught the world the sport of MMA, and you would throw these softballs to Joe, and you would set him up so he could teach new people." And as you guys well know, I get shit from time to time on Twitter, like, he's been doing it this long. Why doesn't he know that? Why is he asking the question? Because our audience was growing massively every single show. And we had to be true to you fans who had been with us for 50 shows, but we had to teach and educate the new ones as it continued to grow. So, it's the quarterback, just if it's a pitch, if it's a slant, if it's a cross, whatever it is, get him the ball and let him run with it. And when you have Rogan next to you, it's pretty easy to let him do his thing.
Yep, for sure. So discussing that growth of the sport, Mike, as someone that is in such a unique perspective, and you got to witness the growth of MMA throughout the 90s and the 2000s, both as a fan and as a professional working in the sport, do you think that the sport, as it's gotten more and more commercialized and more popular, particularly in the last 7 to 8 years, do you think that maybe the purity of the sport, as it were, is getting watered down? As we see examples like fighters being able to leapfrog other fighters because of money fights or because of popularity.
So far, just to give you guys a compliment, you guys are on freaking fire. These are some of the best questions that I've ever been asked. So,
thank you. Really appreciate
to both
that.
you guys. Seriously, and I mean that sincerely, because they're fun to answer, and they're not what's your favorite fight or your favorite fighter, which if you were going to get to that, I
know.
But no, they're great questions.
Appreciate it.
And I love that. Here's what has happened. The sport has grown massively. The talent pool has grown massively. But back in the day, we had about a pay-per-view a month, maybe a couple where there were 2. So it was 15 to 17 shows, and every single one was the Super Bowl. Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. Anderson Silva, BJ Penn, John Jones, Randy Couture, Jose Aldo, GSP, Chuck Liddell, obviously Chuck and Tito. The only thing better than a rematch is a trilogy. We all know that, even though they did it about 15 years later.
Years too late,
yeah, a little bit. But you know what? I give Tito a little props for win or lose. No pictures on the scorecard.
Yeah,
that I do. I do believe Alex has. I don't want to say hurt the sport, but it certainly takes the magnitude out of the big feel of every show. I mean, let's take the NFL, for example. There's a limited number of regular season games. They went from 14 to 16 many, many years ago. So at the end of the day, if your team's in the Super Bowl, they're going to play about 20 weekends. And I know it's jammed together, but if you go 20 over 52, that's every other week or so. That's why our appetite for the NFL is so massive. For college football is so massive. I'm a big hockey guy. 82 games is still 82 games. I don't know how dudes call 162 in baseball, especially if your team's out of the playoff race in June. Wow. So I believe that the big show feel is not quite as direct and prominent as it was before, Alex. But that's just because of all of the shows. So you have a show. You have a great Bellator. You've got you've got everything going on. Then you still have a big pay-per-view. It just doesn't feel as massive as before because our fans aren't sitting on pins and needles waiting for, Saturday the 13th when we go live from Las Vegas at 7:00. And, our main event is Anderson Silva. And, whatever it might be. I love this fight. So that's the real difference is I truly, in production-wise, I always felt it was like the Super Bowl. Every show. And that's what was fun for me as a play-by-play guy, is to have all those production elements, to have you fans be so passionate. And to know I was speaking to passionate fans around the world, that's the change. And so, to separate the bigger ones from the other ones and so on and so forth, they're a little bit more ebb and flow as opposed to, boom, this one's for you. This is the AFC Championship. Super Bowl's in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Mike, something we often hear about in MMA is obviously that, it can be a sport of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And I think the sport is so interesting because of that contrast. As an example, we love to watch fighters fight, but maybe, we're not so interested in the fact that they maybe not be getting as compensated or for as fairly, the amount of damage they're taking and whatnot. What's something that you love about the sport, but also, maybe don't currently like about the sport of MMA?
Well, the thing that I love the most is that every element of mixed martial arts is a martial art. I mean, but really take that back and think about it. If you're 4 or 5 years old, you walk into your first karate dojo, the first 3 words you learn are yes, sir, no, sir. You learn about discipline and humbleness, and you learn where the fight takes place. If you're a wrestler, you've been running around old school. You were running around in garbage bags, man, trying to make weight. I mean, that's as humbling a sport as there is. The Muay Thai, everything. The Muay Thai comes with that same martial art tradition. Judo, anything does. And so, me being a hockey player my entire life, and the mentality and the team first mentality of hockey players, coming and working hard and they want to give credit to everyone. That was what helped me relate to all the mixed martial artists, is they're built that same way. Yes, they are, at the end of the day, they are putting themselves out there. It's a one-on-one game. It's not 5-on-5 or power play late in the third period, but it's the same attitude and the same humbleness. And I always equated it to a playoff series in hockey. The greatest thing in hockey is the end of a playoff series where they shake hands. We call them handshakes. Because in youth hockey, we shake hands every game. The NHL doesn't, and that's not a disrespectful thing. But when you end a 6-game series, let's say back in the day when I was doing, Colorado and Detroit, and there's hatred, and there's cross checks in the face, and there's blood all over the ice. At the end of it, you shake hands and you say, you know what, well done, well played. I appreciate that you played hard against me. That's what I love about mixed martial artists. That was the easiest thing for me to relate to. Negatives, man, Josh, I haven't run across a lot of guys who don't live by that mantra. And perhaps I was spoiled. The first fight I ever called as a main event was Randy Couture beating Maurice Smith. And so I guess the thing that disappoints me at times is if a guy has a setback or two and they find themselves fall way down the block, where really they've made it all the way to the top. Here's an example. Here's a perfect example. Ryan Bader, Phil Davis, they go to Bellator. Everybody wants to say, these are UFC throwaways. They couldn't do anything in the UFC, so let's just get rid of them. That's why they went to Bellator, because they were no good in the UFC. Well, wait a second. Ryan Bader lost to Lyoto Machida, John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, Rumble, and Glover Teixeira. Okay, I don't think that's a sack of garbage going over to Bellator. And Phil, the only one you'd add to Phil would be Ryan, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I don't like, is when guys get discounted if they're not in the octagon in some form or fashion, like they haven't achieved a lot, because there's a lot of people who have knocked on the top of that door and never gotten past. Kenny Florian is a great example. I mean, Kenny almost killed himself getting to 145. Said it was the worst decision of his life, let alone fight Jose Aldo at 145. That's I guess if there is something to really point out, Josh, to your question, that would be it. When guys get discredited because they don't have a belt. Well, they don't have a belt because John Jones was around. They don't have a belt because Anderson Silva ruled at 85 for 10 years. Because GSP was unbeatable. Because BJ Penn was the prodigy. And Jose Aldo brought his buddy Renan Barão at 135 and they dominated. So there's no shame in, there's 3 medals in the Olympics. I know there's no runner up. You either win or you don't win. But a lot of times you can do a lot even in defeat. And I'll tell you who has proven that point is Michael Chandler. Because Michael Chandler was in Bellator forever. He was truly the face of Bellator. And Scott Coker was happy for Michael to have the opportunity to go to the UFC. Michael hasn't won, but man, has he fought. And has he been in some wars. So don't tell me that Bellator's longtime champion, the face of Bellator, isn't amongst the elite in the octagon, because Michael Chandler himself and many others, but Michael Chandler has proven that to be true.
100%. Mike,
or
lastly, 100%. Lastly from us, Mike, we want to say thank you. Just, our earliest memories, watching fights, and what drew us into the sport as a fan and as practitioners was hearing the energy that you and Joe would give, when calling these fights. And I think that your extensive work covering the most memorable fights of all time, definitely created a legacy that will live on in fans' minds for the years to come. Seeing as though this is the last thing I want to say, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. Could you give us "It Is All Over"?
Of course.
The episode ended.
First, I definitely will. First, I'll share 2 things with you. The first time we went to Sydney is the only time I came home from an event on a boat. Because we had met a dude and a bunch of us went out, and he said, just walk down and I'll be docked here. And then we went to the harbor. So that was an awesome trip. I loved coming to Sydney. Melbourne was, obviously one of the biggest, I don't know, upsets, was one of the biggest fights ever when Holly beats Ronda in the Etihad Stadium. It was incredible. And, but coming back on a boat, after that, and AC/DC, if you guys remember, was there the night before. So it was packed at 9 a.m. Everybody was still drunk. You Aussies are unbelievable fans. And I got to give a shout out to the King of Rock and Rumble, Elvis Sinisic. He got into some commentating and that. I did this show called The Lingerie Bowl years ago, and Elvis said, "I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go." And he had gotten. Well, he got rocked a lot. His multicolored hair was red by the end of the fight. And these fighters, the players, the women, like everybody would look at him like, "Did you win?" And he, "Do I look like I won?" But he was happy. So a shout out to my good buddy Elvis. I know he's looking in the government right now, and I love that guy. He is truly one of the best human beings that I've met in the sport. And truly, the questions from Josh and Alex coming all the way from Australia to my home in Phoenix, Arizona. You guys are champions.
Thank you.
You guys, the new champion, Josh and Alex, winner by knockout. It is all over. Just like that.
Thank you very much, Mike. You're the man.
Guys.
All the best. We'd love to speak to you again.
Anytime.
Appreciate it.